Hello and welcome to Guide Dog Readiness presented by Leader Dogs for the Blind. My name is Maggie Winn and I am a certified orientation and mobility specialist at Leader Dogs for the Blind. With me today is Eric Rodman, and we are so excited to be presenting for the Visions 2020 conference. An O&M Specialist works one-on-one with people who have vision loss on how to navigate their environment safely, efficiently, and with grace. Orientation and mobility specialists may work for a hospital system, a nonprofit, a school district, and some guide dog organizations also have orientation and mobility specialists on staff. Learning how to use a white cane is a prerequisite skill for getting a guide dog and knowing how to navigate an environment. On the screen, we have a small black lab puppy wearing a future Leader Dog bandana, and I'm gonna send it over to Eric Rodman.
All right, hello everybody. I'm excited to be here today. As Maggie said, my name is Eric Rodman. I am a guide dog mobility instructor with Leader Dogs for the Blind. And essentially what that means is that I spend a portion of my year training guide dog candidates to become responsible guide dogs. We go through a series of testing and assessments to make sure that they're up to standard. We then match those clients, or we match those dogs with our accepted client base to the school. And then finally, the culmination of all of that, and the most important aspect of my job, is putting dog with handler and teaching the handler how to safely and effectively travel with their new guide dog. So I'm very excited to be here with you guys today, and we're going to go ahead and dive right into our overview of what we're going to be going over.
All right, so this is Maggie again, and the first thing that we want to talk about is our Leader Dog programs. So we're of course known for guide dog training. We usually have about 150 to 200 of those matches made each year. We additionally have an orientation and mobility program. So again, that's cane training, knowing how to get from point A to point B in your environment and how to do that safely, effectively, and with some grace. With that, we're serving about 100 to 130 clients annually. We just recently added a position, so we have 4 full-time orientation and mobility specialists on staff, as well as we have some of our other staff that are also certified orientation and mobility specialists that jump in throughout the year. Additionally, we have a really exciting program that is usually the last week of June, which is our summer experience camp for 16 and 17-year-olds. And we bring up to 24 campers onto our campus for 7 days. And we work on leadership skills as well as having just some really great summer camp experiences. So rock wall climbing, zip lining, sometimes we're playing beep kickball, learning how to use different GPS devices, and how to navigate different environments. So this year, due to COVID-19, we're not able to bring our summer campers on campus, but what we did instead was we decided to go virtual, and we're actually gonna have 44 14 to 17-year-olds spending a week with us in a virtual format. That application is currently closed, but if you wanna learn more about it, you can head to leaderdog.org/programs/summer experience camp. So we're going to dive into the content of Guide Dog Readiness. Our learning objectives are going to be the required orientation and mobility skills that are necessary in order to get a guide dog. We're going to talk about the International Guide Dog Federation standards. So IGDF is a self-governing organization of different guide dog organizations all over the world who come together to make standards that clients have to achieve, but then also standards for the organization itself. So standards for the apprenticeship model for the guide dog mobility instructors, for breeding and for training and all different aspects. We're also going to talk about the different standards that Leader Dog has for our applicants who are applying. We're going to talk about how to prepare as a client or as a student to get a guide dog. We're going to talk about the lifestyle impact of getting a guide dog. So really just the pros and cons of guide dog mobility. And then Eric's going to bring us through researching guide dog organizations and how to choose which organization is going to be best suited for your needs. So while we're going through the presentation, I want you to keep these questions in mind. So the first one is, are you an independent cane traveler? So do you only do the minimum independent travel required to get from one place to another indoors? Or are you motivated to develop independent routes to different destinations and destinations that are meaningful that you're going to frequently? Do you have good orientation skills? So are you able to maintain orientation only in areas that are really familiar, or do you also maintain orientation when you're in unfamiliar areas? And can you remain oriented when you're in an open area without the ability to follow a shoreline or a grass line? And then do you have good orientation skills, not just indoors, but also outdoors? Are you able to analyze traffic patterns at a variety of intersections and make reduced risk crossings? Do you have functional residual vision? So functional vision is something that's going to be a little bit different from organization to organization. Some of the different guide dog organizations are going to find that there's certain vision that is allowable, and then other organizations or schools are going to require that a handler of a guide dog has less residual vision. Do you willingly travel in adverse weather? So being in Michigan, in the Midwest, this is a really important question because it's really going to be important that a dog gets out every single day. And if someone was going to choose to come to guide dog class in the Midwest, they may be here during those winter months, which is about half of our year. And it's going to be important that they're willing to travel in all different types of weather that we get. And are you emotionally mature and psychologically stable? So this is really important because class can be stressful. It is a residential dormitory setting with shared meals, classes, and transportation to and from different training environments. So if someone has a diagnosed mental illness, we just require that it's under good control because we are working with varying ages, demographics, and physical capabilities. So some additional questions to ask yourself is, are you capable of exercising good problem-solving skills when faced with an unusual situation? Are you cognitively and physically capable of handling and walking with a guide dog? So do you have the ability to remember when and how much to feed your dog and water your dog, when it needs to be taken out to leash relieve? And then, especially for our younger applicants, we really want to know whether or not they're able to maintain a consistent schedule in their personal life. So if they're juggling things like school and work, and then they have summer break, do they have the ability to keep that consistent schedule? Do they have the ability to learn new skills? So being able to recognize and respond to an animal's needs are really important. As far as physical stamina, guide dog class is going to be long days with routes of at least 6 blocks twice per day. In order to get a guide dog, someone's going to have really good arm strength to control a large young dog. Of course, we make the best match possible, but all young dogs are going to pull on leash and challenge handlers at times. It's also going to be important that if you have a guide dog, you have the ability to bend down to pick up after the dog. The next question is, why do you want a guide dog? So some less than great reasons are that maybe a friend or a family member will think that it's going to fix a problem, or maybe you think it's going to make traveling or mobility easier, or that it will compensate for a skill deficit. Or even just a general liking of dogs without understanding guide dog mobility fully are not always great reasons. Some better reasons are that it's going to help bridge the social gap. So when you're walking with a dog, many times people will come up to you and there's always something to talk about, which could be a pro or con. Increased efficiency in navigating around obstacles. So a long cane is going to detect obstacles, and a guide dog is going to navigate around those obstacles. And then another good reason is just having that desire for independence when you're going through a transitional period in your life. So if someone's transitioning from high school to college, or you're entering a new workplace, or making a move. And then, is your family or school or workplace, are they supportive and safe? Again, typically for our younger clients, recognizing that having a guide dog is going to be about $1,000 a year when you think of vet care and food, that financial assistance from family is going to be really important. And then you want to make sure that your friends and family or your school or workplace, that they have an awareness of the lifestyle impact, and maybe even having a willingness to assist in learning how to help pattern the dog when you're going to new places. If there are younger students around or siblings in the home or young children in the home, you really want to make sure that they understand the difference of a guide dog versus a pet. And then, do you have a higher level of independent daily living skills? So, of course, clients must have good hygiene and they must not require assistance with their medication. And that's simply because if a student or client can't maintain their own physical appearance, hygiene, and medication, we would be questioning whether or not they would be able to maintain the grooming and potential medical issues that a guide dog could have as they age. All right, so now Eric is going to bring us through the application process for getting a guide dog.
All right. Thank you, Maggie. It's Eric here again. Okay, so all those who wish to apply to Leader Dog, all our applicants need to go through an application process, which is comprised of several different pieces here we have listed on the screen, which I'm going to go over. This information is then passed along to our admissions committee, which I will briefly touch on here in a moment. And they review all applicants' files and videos to make the determination whether or not they're suitable candidates for the guide dog training class. So like I said, the application process has several pieces here. The first of which is the actual application form. Applicants can request a hard copy or an electronic copy from our client services department, or they can be found on the Leader Dog website, which is leaderdog.org. Or they can call up to the school here and talk to the client services department. The second of which is the consent to release information. This is simply so that we can reach out to any personal references and O&M specialists if they're listed, anybody listed in the application, in case we need to gather more information to make the decision. Next would be the medical evaluation. This is to be filled out by a medical professional, probably your primary care physician, just to make sure that you're medically fit for guide dog training. As Maggie touched on, it is, there is a physical component to it, and we want to make sure that our clients are physically capable of keeping up with the training and also just physically capable of caring for and maintaining a young dog on a daily basis. Next would be a vision evaluation to be completed by a medical or vision professional so that we can get an accurate gauge on the level of vision that you have left remaining. We also will have an honest conversation with our clients when they do come in, because we do understand that sometimes vision can change between the time that a applicant applies and then is accepted and comes in for guide dog training. Next would be personal references. There's a form that is included with the application process with specific questions. For our O&M program, we require 2. For the guide dog training, we require 3 to 5 personal references. And again, with that consent to release, we may reach out to talk to some of those references to gather some more information. A travel video is also required. And this is a video showing the physical capabilities of the applicant, performing such activities as ascending and descending stairs, showing a typical route that they travel in their home environment or their home area, or a variety of the intersections that they may encounter in their home area, as well as showing the home environment itself, because we want to make sure that the home environment is a suitable place for a guide dog, that there's area for the dog to be relieved, that the home is somewhat clean and picked up so that the dog's not getting into trouble or ingesting anything it shouldn't. Also, so we can get a gauge of what type of environment the client will be traveling in, because that's going to kind of dictate the type of dog that we would place in that match. And again, so all this information is collected together and then passed on to our admissions committee. The admissions committee is a group of people from various departments in the organization that meets on a weekly basis to review applicant files. And so you can see there's a list here of the several people, first of which is our extended service manager, the manager of our O&M department, her or one of our certified orientation and mobility specialists, are present. We have our guide dog mobility instructor team supervisors that are present during admissions, the manager of canine training, as well as the manager of quality assurance, who oversees the testing and assessment of our dogs in training to make sure that they are up to standard to be considered responsible guides. And then our manager of client services, who oversees all of our client services outreach programs. And then finally, our director of programs and services. So like I said, these people get together on a weekly basis and sit down, and they will review all the information submitted by the applicant and watch all the videos. And they will make a determination whether or not the applicant is a suitable candidate for guide dog training. And we have listed up here on the screen, but there are 3 decisions that the committee can come to. The first of which is approval, that they find that the applicant is a suitable candidate and the home environment looks good, and they will go ahead and approve them and put them on our approved wait list, so that our guide dog mobility instructors can then start looking into finding the right match for that client. An applicant can be put on hold for various reasons. It may be that they need to gather more information, or there could be maybe a major life change coming up soon, like starting a new job, or for younger people going back to school, things like that we need to gather more information on before go ahead and accepting them into guide dog training. And then finally can be denial, and denial can be based on several different reasons, whether or not they don't think it's the right time or the right mobility tool, or that the home environment is not the right place for a guide dog at this time. In that case, applicants are allowed to appeal the denial decision and reapply to the admissions committee. Okay, I think next we're going to go over the required O&M skills. Maggie's going to take us through that, okay?
All right, thank you, Eric. So some of the required orientation and mobility skills that you're going to want to think about before applying to for a guide dog are: do you have confidence in independent travel? So you must be able to travel independently within your home area. Leader dog and that admissions committee request a minimum of 1 mile per day, and you must be familiar enough with your home environment to travel that length, and also be able to include various street crossings in that travel. You need to have good orientation and problem solving skills. So you must be able to reorient yourself in new environments, or if you've lost your way, be able to get back on track. Problem solving skills are very important, and cardinal directions are strongly encouraged. Especially with a guide dog, you're going to have less tactile information, so knowing which way you're turning can be really important for maintaining orientation. You need to have the ability to travel without relying solely on tactile feedback. So again, with a cane, you're getting lots of really good tactile information about your environment. And the largest difference between a cane and a guide dog is that many times a client isn't going to contact landmarks or objects with a guide dog because the dog is going to simply guide you around. For some people, this might cause problems. And the best way to practice that skill is with human guide or Juno walks in different types of environments. And Eric's going to talk a little bit more about that later on. Do you have an understanding of time, distance, and rate? So what we mean by that is, how long does it take to travel a certain distance at a certain rate? Can you estimate that? And can you estimate when you've walked a half block or 3/4 of a block? Another thing is having the ability to detect flat or blended curbs and curb ramps, and being able to detect that with your feet without having that cane giving you that information, a few steps ahead. Also, the ability to analyze different intersections and make reduced risk crossings, to be able to determine the patterns of the traffic and be confident when you're making those decisions. Some other things are voice intonation, being able to have a rise and fall in your voice, because dogs tend to respond more to voice intonation than to words or commands themselves. And then during Juno practice, giving praise and corrections. And again, Eric will talk a little bit more about that. Another thing to consider is cutbacks. So a leader dog is trained to travel curb to curb. So many times for someone who might have residual vision, they might see the intersecting intersection and then with their cane, simply make the turn. So would you be willing to travel all the way up to the curb and then cut back to make a left or a right? And this is important for guide dog travel because dogs need a lot of consistency, and that helps with that process. And dog responsibility. So are you willing to continue to keep up your cane skills? Because dogs can't go everywhere. So back in the day, all guide dog organizations took a cane from a student when they arrived on campus. But now we encourage our clients to carry their cane even when traveling with a guide dog in order to have that cane available for probing and discovery in case they need to problem solve if you run into construction or something unusual on your route. So the next thing that we're going to go over is the International Guide Dog Federation standards for getting a guide dog. So IGDF is, again, that self-governing body of different organizations who have created standards for many different things. And these are the standards for a student or a client to get a guide dog. The person assessing this would either be a certified orientation and mobility specialist like myself, or a guide dog mobility instructor like Eric. So this is why we have that admissions committee that Eric previously talked about. So the first one is motivation. So does the client or do you have the motivation to train and work with a guide dog team in the long term? So typically a guide dog is going to be working for 7 to 10 years. And do you want to make that commitment? Do you have the ability to achieve and maintain the leadership role in the person-guide-dog relationship? Physical ability to manage a large breed guide dog. Typically, our dogs can be anywhere from 45 to 85 pounds, and they're graduating at about 1.5 years old, so they do require a good amount of physical ability. Do you have functional orientation to the routes and destinations that you will use? Do you have consistent orientation with minimal to no assistance? Do you have those problem-solving skills and the ability to reorient yourself? And then also independent street crossings at both stop-controlled and light-controlled intersections. Do you have sufficient work for the guide dog to maintain its safe guiding skills? So leader dogs are going to require a minimum of 3 established purposeful routes, so routes that are meaningful to you and that are regularly traveled without assistance. And then also, again, that physical stamina, being able to travel at about 2 square blocks at about 2 miles per hour. We require vision loss that causes dependency on a guide dog. So vision loss that causes the person to be using a primary mobility aid, whether that's a long cane or a guide dog, and that a person is typically legally blind. So if a person isn't using their long cane, or they're only using their long cane during certain times of day maybe, then we have that open conversation to find out a little bit more about that person's history and their travel patterns, and to find out if a guide dog would be the right tool for that person. And then as far as road crossings, again, different types of being able to make crossings at different types of intersections and to be able to make those reduced risk crossings. If someone has hearing, we require them to have hearing that enables the person to detect the presence and the directionality of traffic. If a person has both hearing loss and vision loss, that does not mean that they cannot get a guide dog. That just means that we're going to do a little bit more to find out how that person uses different skills, whether that's soliciting information or using a crossing card to complete their routes. We also require that a client has a positive home environment. So especially with our younger applicants, again, who may be transitioning from high school to college and then maybe living with roommates or having young children, we really want to make sure that they're going to have a safe and supportive environment. And if they are living with roommates, making sure that, you know, people aren't leaving things out, or that the home is very tidy and safe for a dog to live in. And then financial capabilities. So it's important that our clients have access to the required resources to maintain the guide dog's ongoing health and temperamental well-being. All right, so next, we, as leader dog, we have additional standards that our clients must reach as well. So one of the main things is independent self-care skills. And I touched on this a little bit earlier, but simply we need our clients to be able to maintain their own medication and hygiene, again, so that if the dog needed medication later on in their life, that a handler would be able to manage those things. Our clients need to have socially appropriate behavior, solid work ethic, because class is long and hard. And our clients are a minimum age of 16 years or older. So this year for our virtual summer experience camp, we opened it up to 14 and 15-year-olds for the first time. But for our 3 programs, which are free to clients, virtual summer experience camp, the 1-week orientation and mobility program, and the guide dog program, the minimum age is 16 years or older. If we have an applicant who is a minor for guide dog, those people getting that guide dog at 16 or 17, they would get a guide dog delivery rather than coming on campus. And for our minors who are coming in for orientation and mobility, they would be coming in when guide dog class is not in session, so that we have a younger group of folks on campus during that time. All of our clients also must be seizure-free for at least 6 months. And if our clients are deafblind, so they do not have hearing that is usable or vision that is usable, then our clients must know ASL. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is talk a little bit about how to prepare for guide dog readiness with your orientation and mobility specialist. So the best way to do this is to practice human guide or with a Juno walk. And Eric's going to bring us through that a little bit more in the next couple of slides. But when you're traveling human guide with someone, typically what you're doing is you're holding on to the back of your guide's elbow. And you would want, if I was holding on to someone's left elbow, then I would want my right shoulder to be aligned typically with their left shoulder. So you're walking about a half step behind. And we do have pamphlets if you email us that we can send you those skill sets. So when you're traveling human guide, you would want to be on a route that you know, and you would be giving your guide route directions, and you'd be providing those directions not only for the route, but also when you're deciding when it is safe to make street crossings. So this would be something you typically would be doing with your orientation and mobility specialist, or as homework that's been given to you by your O&M specialist because you've met certain skill sets. You would be detecting curbs, flat curbs, different ramps, and be using footwork. And really finding out if you have an awareness of when you're walking over a flat curb. You'd be, again, analyzing intersections. You'd be listening to traffic for alignment. And then once you've determined that it's safe to cross, or that it's a reduced risk time, you could squeeze the arm of your guide to initiate that crossing. With your orientation and mobility specialist, you can also work on veer recovery skills. So if you're making a crossing and you start to veer towards your perpendicular street, or you start to veer towards parallel traffic, you're going to want to use some of those auditory cues to find out which way you veered and how far you have. So some of the methods with a guide dog are similar to that of a cane, but with the dog, it is going to be more reliant on the auditory cues, versus with a cane, you might pick up different textures or different curves. So that's definitely something that you would want to practice, especially if you do find out that you veer. You would want to work on time, distance, and rate. So again, knowing when you're traveling human guide or with the Juno, that you can detect when you've gone a half of a block or 3/4 of a block, or when you should be getting close to your ramp. We want a focus on non-tactile feedback. So listening to different auditory cues and non-tactile landmarks. So if you're in an area and there is a water fountain or something, are you able to pick up on that and know where you're at in relation to another building because you're passing by that water fountain? We also want to work on encouraging and building stamina for guide dog class. And then we want our O&M specialists to assist with developing routes that are meaningful and have destinations. And again, the more the better. And Leader Dog requires typically 3 destinations that you can get to. And then we also want to make sure that we're making a note with our O&M specialists who refer people or people who are seeking O&M skills that we're always referring to other professionals regarding balance and strength concerns. So we want to take care of those concerns first before someone enters into an orientation and mobility program that is more accelerated or that requires more physical strength. And then when you're working with your O&M specialist, those folks can also help with advocating or educating a school body or the workplace or any place or anyone that you think would need a little bit of assistance in understanding the true role of your cane and also a guide dog. If you are a student who is losing vision and you're still in the school system, it's also really important that you're advocating for sufficient time for orientation and mobility skills from your school district. And that's really important even if the student has good vision during the day but has less vision at night. You really want to make sure that you're working on those skills and that you're doing that early enough that you're not rushed towards the end of your school career. All right, so next Eric is going to bring us through how to do some human guide and how to do some Juno walks with videos.
Excellent. Thank you, Maggie. And so Maggie touched on a good way to prepare someone to become guide dog ready would be doing human guide and what we call Juno at Leader Dog here. And that's just simply a simulated dog walk. So this first video we have here is a student under blindfold who is with an instructor. They're walking in a residential area on a sidewalk. This is actually out front of our downtown Rochester training facility. And they're going to be practicing what we call a walking right turn. And just like it sounds, it's a right turn that is made during movement. And so the instructor is actually acting as the guide or as the dog while performing human guide to the student. So you'll hear her actually giving commands to the instructor while they are moving. We typically practice human guide and Juno in the first couple days of guide dog class because it allows for students to practice the mechanics, the verbal commands and hand signals that are paired with them, free of the stress of managing a young, excited dog. So we can really focus on getting those mechanics down and making them become more like muscle memory before we add the dog into the equation. This also allows you as an instructor to gather more information about a student as far as, their speed, the stamina, strength, their problem-solving abilities, things that we can't always gather from just watching their applicant videos. So again, in this video, it's going to be a student walking under blindfold with an instructor down a sidewalk in a residential area. You're going to notice in the video that there is some music playing in the background. And how we have our facility set up downtown is there's a speaker out front that we use as an auditory landmark or cue in the environment to let our students know when they're coming close to the front of the building so that she can begin to command the guide to make the walking right turn to the building. And what's going to make this a successful turn is the student's going to slow her pace down, give the guide plenty of time before that turn comes to say right, and then she will follow the guide all the way up to the door and congratulate her. So we're going to go ahead and play this video real quick. Okay, and so you notice that she, again, slows her pace, gives the command right, follows the guide through the right turn, and then follows that up with find the door, which is ultimately the destination or the target of where they're headed. Okay, the next video we have here is the same exact setup, same student, same instructor, same stretch of sidewalk, and this is an incorrect walking turn. And And the difference between this video and the first video we played is the student is not going to slow her pace whatsoever. So she's going to continue just kind of blazing along down that sidewalk. The music will be playing, so she should be able to hear that, that auditory cue in the environment. But she's going to continue on while telling the guide right, right. The instructor in this case is just not going to listen and continue on straight to see what the student does in this case. And she's going to continue on down the sidewalk for a little while. So we're going to go ahead and play this video. So like Maggie touched on earlier, knowing that time, distance, rate, especially when we're working with a dog, to know that, you know, your turn is coming up about halfway down the block and you feel like you've been walking well over halfway down the block. It may be that we're a little off course. And in this case, having the music there as an auditory cue, once that music starts to shift from her right ear to behind her, in that case, the student's going to want to stop and kind of readjust herself and reorient herself to the environment. And as Maggie alluded to earlier, we always encourage students, even though that if they're using guide dogs, to always have their cane with them if they need to troubleshoot. So we're going to go ahead, and this next video here is what we call Juno. And simply, Juno is a simulated dog walk where we are using the leather harness that we will actually place on the guide dog when it comes time to working with the student and the dog together. But we will use the actual equipment ahead of time so that the student gets used to managing the harness, the leash, and all the different pieces of equipment before, again, we enter the dog into the equation, which can make things a little more stressful when you have a young, excited dog in harness. So this is going to be a video of the same student and instructor. They are in a, this is a residential area, and they are approaching a down curb to a four-way intersection. There is a little tactile strip with truncated domes, followed by a rather somewhat flat curb. And so the student is going to approach the curb. Juno is going to take the student all the way up to the edge of the curb, and the student's going to stop. She's going to use her foot to do some footwork and probe to locate that curb. And then she's going to deliver some meaningful verbal praise. And Maggie kind of brought that up earlier. But again, rewarding that dog with some meaningful verbal praise. We try to practice that while we're doing it in Juno to get the students in the habit of using the different tones of their voice when it comes to either praising the dog for doing something good, or delivering a command, or trying to you know, reprimand the dog from doing something undesirable. So we're going to go ahead and play that. So again, it's a very quick video, but again, student stops, identifies the curb, and then again gives that meaningful praise. So this is the same exact setup, same curb approach, and what we're doing here is we're going to have Juno stop a little bit early, and we will typically, after we work with students the first day or so and teach them the fundamental skills or the basic hand signals and mechanics, we will start to do a little bit of what we call bad Juno, essentially where we are going to kind of test the students' problem-solving skills. And this is just to kind of prepare them, because again, these are dogs and they're well-trained dogs, but they are not robots. They are not going to perform perfectly. And sometimes they do stop a little early at a curb, or they do notice that bird fluttering off the, you know, just off the sidewalk there. And it's going to fall on the handler to be the one to keep the dog focused and redirect them right back on their work. So we're going to have the instructor guide the student, stop a little short of the curb here. The student's going to probe with her foot. She's not going to discover the curb. So then she's going to use the command hup up, which is just telling Juno to move up to the desired location. So again, some very good, meaningful praise. And I failed to mention this earlier, but in the video process, we strongly recommend that applicants do not edit their videos, we strongly encourage, we want to see problem solving skills, especially in your home environment. So it's perfectly okay to make mistakes in application videos, because we want to see your ability to problem solve in your environment, because especially with a dog added into the equation, you may get off track at times. And so your ability to problem solve and get yourself back on route is going to be very important. So we want to see where your skill set is at, not to base a judgment, but just to know where your baseline set of skills is at and where we want to get you to. Okay, so this last bit of video here is going to be a complete straight crossing. So again, same student under blindfold with an instructor, and they are going to be approaching the same curb that we were at previously. So they will come down to the down curb. Juno will stop. The student will probe with the foot to find the curb, and then reward the dog. And then she will perform a traffic assessment, then cross the street to find the up curb on the other side of the street, reward the dog again, and then get up out of the street and continue on down the sidewalk. So pay attention to the commands that are given, the verbal praise, and we'll go ahead and roll this video.
Juno, forward.
Very nice. Some great, meaningful praise. So again, these are some techniques that we use as guide dog mobility instructors for clients before introducing the dog into the equation. You can practice these skills with an O&M specialist using a folding cane and simply folding it into a triangle and then holding onto the base of the triangle to kind of simulate a guide dog harness handle. And you can practice these kind of following techniques as well here. Okay, so next we're going to pass it over to Maggie, and she's going to talk about the lifestyle impact of bringing a guide dog into your life.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Eric. So we're going to talk about some key factors that we want all of our applicants to think about, but definitely our younger applicants who are transitioning from high school to college or from college to the workforce. So one of the positive things about having a guide dog is, of course, the companionship. That's something that we hear all the time. Another positive is the social interaction. So a lot of times the dog is going to encourage people to talk to the client, talk to the guide dog handler, where sometimes the cane will discourage people because the person walking towards them might recognize that that cane is, telling them information about the sidewalk, and so they're going to step away or step off of the sidewalk, versus the dog might create someone wanting to say, oh, good morning, your dog is so beautiful, or whatever it may be. Another positive is that the dog is going to navigate around obstacles. The cane's function is to detect obstacles, and it inevitably takes a little bit more time to move around those obstacles with the cane, and the cane can also sometimes get stuck under obstacles. So for that reason, guide dog travel is at times a preferred method for certain people. Other people would prefer to have that tactile information from the cane. Traveling with a guide dog can be faster paced. Once a dog is patterned, a dog can be much more efficient in open or complex areas because the dog is going to typically choose the most efficient travel line. And then there is a little bit extra level of safety with traveling with a guide dog. So the dog provides an extra measure of traffic safety, although the student or the applicant or the client is the one who is telling the dog forward and is making that decision for when they are initiating that crossing. So it's really important that the client is able to make safe or reduced risk traffic judgments and should never test the dog, but we do something called traffic checking our dog, which allows the dog to make a judgment that is intelligent disobedience. So even though the handler is saying forward, the dog has decided, no, it's absolutely not a safe time to cross. So some of the cons or negatives of getting a guide dog are, of course, parking the dog. So relieving the dog And then, of course, picking up after the dog. It's also important to think about that the dogs could have accidents, and a trash can might not always be conveniently placed. And you're always going to have to carry some level of cleanup supplies. Grooming is also something important because there can be, extra costs associated or just extra time associated with that. Um, there is going to be dog hair in your house, in cars that you ride in, on your clothes, things like that that you're really going to want to consider. Also, it's important to note that with ADA regulations, if a dog is out of control or if a dog does not have good hygiene, that a handler can be asked to leave an establishment. And then, of course, there can be unwanted social interaction as a negative. So pedestrians might try to pet a guide dog. They might even just simply talk to the guide dog or make eye contact with the dog, trying to distract the dog. People might even try to feed your dog. You might have others who judge the dog's performance or the dog's training without truly understanding guide dog handling skills. And they don't necessarily understand the role of the dog in providing independence. Another thing to think about that we talked about before is the cost associated with having a guide dog. And there can always be some unwanted expenses, medical care that's both routine and emergency. And Eric's going to talk a little bit more about that when you're researching guide dog organizations. And then just simply the care of the dog. So bringing the dog to grooming appointments, vet visits, and the consistency that's needed in the feeding, watering, and parking the dog schedule. And then also simply things like bathing the dog and clipping nails. Another thing to think about is having to deal with the retirement of the guide dog and the passing of the guide dog. These are such emotional times. And so some people may simply choose to avoid that and to continue traveling with a cane. The other thing that we talk about a lot, and again, with our transition age students, so those students that are going from high school to college or into the workforce, is that it's a long-term commitment and relationship with the dog. So where will you as a younger student, or where will your child be in 7 to 10 years? And what does that mean? So there's lots of different transition periods where someone may be moving to different places or living with different people, and just really understanding the importance of that. And then some things that I want to talk about with the long cane, because I am an O&M specialist and we teach cane travel, is that you can place the cane anywhere and you can leave it for long periods of time and you don't have to pick up after it. The cane also gives you some good tactile feedback and will let you find different landmarks that a dog will not. Canes also don't cost nearly as much as a dog, and they last about 1,000-fold. So if you're using your cane regularly, your cane should last you a full year. All right, so next, Eric is going to bring us through researching guide dog organizations.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. So you're going to want to do some research yourself before choosing a guide dog organization, because there will be some differences and they will vary from organization to organization. And so typically you can call up ahead of time to gather some of this information. So we just wanted to provide some questions you might want to think about, or some factors to take into consideration before making a decision, as well as I will provide just a few things as far as leader dog goes, because I am able to at least speak on that. The first of which will be what type of post-graduation home support is offered. So you're going to want to look into the different types of home support. Is this on a routine basis, or is it on request, just to address problems? Does the organization provide immediate post-class follow-up? So is somebody going home, shortly after you return home with your dog? What's the average time frame for follow-up? And then what are the number of field representatives available? So people that are out working in the field who can come and work with you in your home environment should you have any issues or working issues or concerns. And what's the typical response time when a request for assistance is made? The second would be, will the organization offer field visits to your school or college? So are these Are these automatically offered to high school and young college students? I know in Leader Dog, we typically have our college students and our younger students in it in the summertime because it coincides with the school year when they are out of classes. And we do provide automatic follow-up um, for our college students unless they feel they do not deem it necessary. Um, will the rep or the field rep work with the school as well as working with the client and the dog on the school property? So will they come and actually work on campus to help with patterning the dog to the typical classrooms you'll be visiting on a daily basis? You want to look into what the organization's ownership policy is. So the ownership policy varies from school to school. So you may want to look into as far as ownership as of the dog. At Leader Dog, we automatically transfer ownership over to the client after 1 year after graduation, unless the team has been placed on a probationary period for working issues or some other type of issue, but ownership is transferred automatically after 1 year. You may want to look into the vet care assistance, and is that provided by the school? Does the school offer medical care for local grads? Do they offer any grants or stipends for routine vet care? Are there funds available for loans for medical emergencies? I know Leader Dog is willing, if the dog is able to return to a working state, clients can apply for financial assistance should there be a medical emergency. Is preventative medication available to grads at a discount? What about if the school will do phone consultations with the client's vet in their home area? And does the school have full-time vets on staff? At Leader Dog, we have 2 full-time vets, and they are on call 24 hours a day. Should clients have any kind of questions or emergencies, they can contact us. Another question might be to look into is contact with the puppy raisers allowed? So all of our wonderful pups here at Leader Dog and at many other schools are raised by puppy raisers, and sometimes puppy raisers would like to share their contact information if their dog does make it all the way through training and is matched with the client. And if both parties wish to communicate, then at least at Leader Dog, we will help facilitate that communication. And finally, is there any charge for the client? So you may want to look into what kind of financial responsibility am I getting into? I know Maggie had talked about it earlier about that $1,000, that it's 800 to 1,000 a year between vaccinations, vet, and everything added up. And as far as travel to the school, things like that, as far as Leader Dog goes, though, there is no cost or expenses for travel to the school, and we provide all our services and training and our dog and all follow-up support free of charge to the client. All right, some additional questions we want to look into. For those who are coming on property for our residential training where they will stay in our residence facility, you might want to know what are the facilities like? Is there Wi-Fi available? Do they have accessible computers? Is there workout facilities or TVs in the room? The guide dog training is extensive and the days are long, but there is also a lot of downtime. So you may want to look into what kind of recreational activities are there to unwind or socialize to kind of fill up that downtime and relax, because we want you to ultimately learn a lot and work hard with your dog, but at the same time, we want you to, be able to relieve some stress from the day as well too. How about where is the organization located? So this will determine how far a student has to travel. Does the distance from the school affect the follow-up support and the time frame for receiving follow-up support? Can they have friends or family visit while they are in here, for residential training? And finally, what's the weather like? Maggie said, here in Michigan, Midwest state, we get all 4 seasons and all kinds of variations of them. So, you're looking into what type of weather you may be experiencing. Is it similar or different from that of your home environment? Is the organization International Guide Dog Federation accredited? Maggie touched on this earlier about this governing body. I know Leader Dog is, and I believe there are 14 schools total in the U.S. who are IGDF accredited. So it may be just something to look into because again, they set all those standards to make sure that the participating schools are keeping their programs and their standards up to par. What other programs does the organization offer? So this you may want to look into what other types of programs other than just the guide dog training. I know Maggie touched on it earlier, but we have our wonderful O&M department who provides O&M training and white cane training. We also have the summer camp experience, which Maggie touched on for our 16 and 17-year-olds. We also offer technology and GPS training for our guide dog clients who are coming in-house from the US and Canada so that they can offer or they can receive assistance with the GPS units which are provided to them free of charge. Another, and this is probably a big consideration there, what are the service models that are offered by the school? So what are the types of guide dog training that they offer? Like I kind of touched on, we do have the residential in-house training where clients will travel to Rochester, Michigan, and then stay on our property for 3 weeks. We have a residence hall. We have a dining room where we provide 3 meals a day at no charge to the client. And the clients stay in here and the trainers will come and work with them 6 days a week for 3 weeks to get them up to class ready or graduation standards so that they can go home with their dogs. We also offer in-home deliveries, which Maggie kind of brought up earlier. So this is where a field representative or instructor will bring a dog to a client in their home area and work with them in their direct home area, in their neighborhoods, and maybe their routes to work or the local store or wherever they travel on a consistent basis. Some schools offer a combination of the two. We now offer here at Leader Dog 8 what we call Flex, which is a shortened stay here on property, and then you return home early with immediate home follow-up with an instructor. So it's a kind of a combination of the two. We also offer short stays and brush-up trainings for our graduate students. So maybe they have one working issue that they particularly need to work on. So they'll come in for a shortened stay just to focus on that one particular issue. We also offer a couple different variations as far as our warm weather training. So, you know, here in the winter, it sometimes gets very cold and hard for us to go out and train outside with the dogs when it is below freezing temperatures outside. So we do offer the warm weather training, especially for our deaf-blind students who rely on ASL, or American Sign Language. It's hard to do so when there are gloves on your hands, so they find performing that training in a warmer environment is more beneficial to the training. We also offer urban training for our students who are from bigger cities who maybe use a lot of more public transportation and mass transit. And then finally, which breeds of dogs are used? You know, we put in the application process if people have a breed preference. So you may want to look into the school if a breed preference is a very important factor to you and see what type of, you know, or what breeds of dogs a particular school uses. For the most part, most schools use a combination of Labradors, Golden Retrievers, a mix of the two, and then some Goldens, and you know there are still Shepherds that are used around. We do use Shepherds. They're more rare than the other breeds, but again, you can always call and gather a lot of this information by talking to the client services department to find out more information before making your decision.
All right, so this is Maggie again. If you want to contact either Eric or I, you can certainly do that via email. You can reach me at margaret.winn@leaderdog.org. So that's margaret.winn @leaderdog.org. If you want to reach Eric, you can reach him at eric.rodman@leaderdog.org. So ERIC.RODMAN @leaderdog.org. On the next slide, we have a little bit more information about how to apply. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. You can reach out to our client services department either via email, clientservices@leaderdog.org, or you can reach them on the phone at 888-777-5332. They'll be more than happy to talk with you about the application process, and they can either email you the application or they can mail it to you if you call and make that request. You also can simply apply online by going to leaderdog.org/apply/, and you can access the application that way. All right, and then our last slide has a golden retriever in harness, kind of giving a big golden smile to the camera. And we just wanted to say thank you so much for having both Eric and I at the Visions 2020 conference. And we hope to hear from you soon.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a great day.